The chandelier above the main floor cost $400,000. You know this because you approved the invoice personally, then approved a second invoice for the same chandelier with a different vendor name, a different amount, and a destination account in Macau. The chandelier hangs there every night, throwing prismatic light across 300 slot machines and 42 table games. And every time you look at it, you see two things simultaneously: the object itself and the transaction it concealed. After enough years in this business, everything has a second meaning. That's not corruption, that's fluency. But before we talk about the mechanics, let's talk about the man who learned to speak this language. Because nobody arrives at a position like yours by accident. You came up through legitimate hospitality. Hotel management degree, entry-level floor supervisor at a mid-tier property in Atlantic City, then a decade of grinding upward through positions that taught you everything about how a large, cash-intensive entertainment operation actually functions. The movement of money through a casino is like the movement of blood through a body, continuous, rhythmic, and fatal if interrupted. You were good at the operational side, exceptionally good. You understood yield optimization, table game analytics, player retention, regulatory compliance. You understood compliance particularly well, which is a skill set that cuts in more than one direction. The property that recruited you away, a gleaming new integrated resort with Pacific Rim financing and ambitions that exceeded its licensing jurisdiction, promoted you to VP of operations within 18 months. The ownership structure was layered in the way that serious money tends to be layered. Holding companies referencing holding companies, registered in jurisdictions selected for their enthusiasm for privacy. You didn't examine it closely. The salary was exceptional, and the mandate was clear. Make the floor profitable and keep the regulators comfortable. You did both, superbly. The first conversation happened at 37,000 feet, in the private cabin of a flight to Singapore you'd been invited on without a complete explanation of why. The man across from you had the polished stillness of someone who has spent decades ensuring that nothing he feels crosses his face uninvited. He poured tea. He asked intelligent questions about casino operations, not the surface questions that journalists ask, but granular operational questions that told you he understood the machinery intimately. He already knew the answers. He was measuring whether you did. Then he asked you one question he didn't already know the answer to. He asked how much unverified cash a well-run casino operation could absorb in a single quarter before the variance became statistically anomalous to an external auditor. You looked at him for a moment. Then you did the calculation honestly, because something told you that dishonesty in this specific moment would be a career-ending mistake. You gave him a number. A range, actually, with the variables clearly stated. He nodded slowly, refilled your tea, and told you that you'd just described exactly the capacity they needed. The architecture is elegant once you understand it. That's the thing nobody outside the industry appreciates. Money laundering at this scale isn't crude. It's accounting with a creative mandate. The fundamental mechanism is the casino's native ability to convert cash into chips and chips into documented winnings. A player arrives at the cage with physical currency. That currency, at the table, becomes a gambling transaction. Gambling transactions generate wins and losses that are, by their nature, statistically variable. Variance is the launderer's best friend. It is the professional explanation for any number that would otherwise require justification. Your contribution is the layer of institutional credibility that makes the variance defensible. The players, you stop thinking of them as players almost immediately and start thinking of them as accounts. Arrive via private arrangement, high-roller hospitality packages flown in from Hong Kong, from Taipei, from Shenzhen, from Vancouver. They receive suite accommodations, premium table access, dedicated hosts. They also receive, through a mechanism that never involves you directly, a specific buy-in amount in a specific denomination that corresponds to a specific figure needing to move. They play, genuinely play in most cases, because the gambling covers the transaction in a psychological authenticity that pure fiction can't replicate. Some win, some lose. The aggregate, managed across multiple accounts over multiple sessions, produces a net figure that is slightly below the deposited amount, the operational fee essentially, and exits the property as documented casino winnings, reportable, taxable, and completely legitimate in origin. You oversee the cage staffing, you approve the comp packages, you manage the regulatory filing schedules. You are the hand that doesn't appear in the transaction, but shapes every element of it. The compliance infrastructure is your masterwork. Casinos operate under aggressive anti-money laundering obligations. Currency transaction reports for cash transactions above 10,000. Suspicious activity reports for patterns that suggest structuring. KYC requirements for high-value players. The regulatory framework is genuinely robust, which means circumventing it requires not the absence of compliance infrastructure, but its very precise manipulation. Your compliance team is excellent. They file every required report. Their documentation is meticulous. The filing volumes are, if anything, impressively high, a fact you've used successfully in 2 regulatory reviews as evidence of the property's institutional commitment to transparency. What the compliance team doesn't know is that the report-triggering thresholds have been operationally incorporated into the transaction design. Nothing that crosses the floor triggers a suspicious activity designation because nothing is structured to trigger one. The accounts are spread across enough sessions, across enough time, with enough genuine gambling activity interleaved that the pattern recognition tools see noise rather than signal. You review the compliance reports monthly. You look for anomalies with genuine professional attention. When you find one, you correct it. The compliance team respects your diligence. The regulators, who have audited the property twice in 4 years, have complimented the operation's record-keeping. The man on the plane has a counterpart you deal with more directly. She is younger, operationally specific, and communicates through a protocol that changes monthly. She sends instructions with the efficiency of someone billing by the word. Amounts, dates, account designations. The occasional adjustment when geopolitical friction requires rerouting. You have met her in person 4 times, each meeting in a different country. Each time, the conversation lasts under an hour and covers only what's necessary. She has never told you anything about the upstream origin of the funds. You have never asked. You've developed a working theory over years of inference. The money is from multiple sources, not a single organization, but a constellation of affiliated interests that share infrastructure the way legitimate businesses share supply chains. Some of it is from activities you can categorize without distress. Some of it is from activities you categorize carefully and then don't revisit. The discipline required to maintain those partitions is considerable. You've developed it the same way you developed every other professional skill, through consistent practice and a clear-eyed understanding that the alternative is not acceptable. A senior regulator named Harris is assigned to your jurisdiction. He is diligent in a way that his predecessors were not. He requests data in formats that weren't previously standard, at granularities that require pulling records you'd grown comfortable leaving undisturbed. You respond to every request completely and promptly. This is the correct move. Delay signals anxiety. Gaps signal concealment. Complete and prompt cooperation signals an institution with nothing to hide, which is the institutional persona you have spent years constructing with genuine care. Harris schedules a site visit. You prepare for it with the thoroughness of a man who understands that the best performance is one the audience never identifies as a performance. The floor is immaculate. The The documentation is organized. The compliance team is briefed on the visit, legitimately briefed because they are legitimately excellent and require no coaching. Harris spends 2 days on property. He asks sharp questions. You answer them with the relaxed precision of someone whose confidence comes from genuine operational mastery, because it does. He finds nothing that constitutes a finding. He thanks you for the cooperation and says he may have follow-up items. You tell him your door is always open. You mean it as a professional commitment and a strategic communication simultaneously. He takes it as the former. After he leaves, you send one brief message through the monthly protocol. The next quarter's accounts arrive through a different routing than usual, with a slightly modified session structure, a small operational adjustment, the kind that a sophisticated and attentive system makes continuously to maintain equilibrium. Harris sends follow-up questions. You answer them the following morning. There's a specific hour most nights, somewhere between the last table closing and the beginning of the cleaning crew's shift, where you walk the empty floor alone. The machines sit dark. The tables are covered. The chandelier is still burning because it burns all night on a timer. $400,000 of light falling on green felt and silent slots. You walk the floor and you run the real numbers in your head, not the ones on the regulatory filings, the actual architecture. What moved this quarter, through which accounts, at what efficiency rate, with what margin of regulatory exposure. You do this the way a surgeon reviews a procedure the evening after performing it. For quality control, for professional discipline. Because the worst operational errors come from the assumption that what worked before will automatically continue working. The floor is the only place you allow yourself to hold the complete picture simultaneously. In every other context, you maintain the partitions, but here, alone, with the chandelier throwing its expensive light across the empty room, you let yourself see the whole structure clearly. It is, you think most nights, a remarkable piece of architecture. What you don't let yourself think about, in this hour or any other, is the upstream source of the specific funds that paid for the chandelier the first time. The legitimate invoice, the real transaction. Some rooms in the building, you've decided, are permanently closed. The chandelier doesn't care either way. It just keeps burning. That's all for today. If you want more deep dives into the world's shadiest corners, you know what to do. Subscribe and stay off the radar with me. See you in the next one.